Episode 43 of the Tool Bag Just Sports Podcast, segment number 3 of the Cheat Sheet. I'm your host, Sebastian. Got to talk some running back rankings today. Running backs, probably the most important position in fantasy football, probably next to tight end. I'm going to go with tight end because if you don't have a tight end, you're pretty much fucked. But it's essential for you to have a really, really good running back. If your running backs are hit or miss, or if they don't produce the amount of points that you need, and I'm talking about 15 plus, it's going to be a long, long season for you. Luckily for you guys, here we are to kind of break down the running back rankings for this year. We're going to give you the must-haves, the guys to stay away from, and the guys that are flying under the radar that are great pickups for this season. I got Mikey, I got Austin, and I got JT joining me. As always, what's going on, fellas?
Hey, what's up, man? Got the running back episode today. Let's go.
Man, we got Mikey Mike. We got Mikey Mike and JT rocking some haircuts. Austin needs a haircut. I need a haircut. All right, let's get to it here, guys. So running back ranking, super big, super important. Last year, we saw Derrick Henry's coming out party. He's somebody that, it was an RB2, kind of a flex RB3 type of running back last year, and then he popped off and became the guy that he was. Dalvin Cook also showed out last year. I think that's somebody that nobody's really surprised, FSU guy, FSU running back. Not really surprised that he popped because you always knew that the talent was there, but to make that jump that he did from being RB, 15 to being RB2 was huge for him. So we're going to start off with our list right now. Austin, I'm going to start with you. Give us your list. We're going to give you our top 25 running backs for this upcoming season. Go ahead, Austin.
All right. So, obviously, at number 1, you got to have Christian McCaffrey. I mean, what are you doing if you don't have him there? But coming in second, we have Saquon Barkley. Alvin Kamara is third. Derrick Henry fourth. Dalvin Cook makes the top 5. And then right behind them, we have Nick Chubb at 6. 7, Aaron Jones. 8, Josh Jacobs. 9, Ezekiel Elliott. Some people told me I had him a little bit too low there, but honestly, like a little bad season last year, so he dropped down a little bit for me. Todd Gurley at 10. Austin Eckler at 11, but he probably could be higher, give or take how the Chargers do this season. Chris Carson at 12. Leonard Fournette at 13. James Conner at 14. 15, Le'Veon Bell. 16, Mark Ingram. 17, Joe Mixon. 18, Melvin Gordon. 19, David Johnson. It's going to be interesting to see what he does in Houston this year. And at 20, I got to give some love to my Dolphins, Jordan Howard. And then we have 21, Tariq Cohen. 22, Devin Singletary. 23, Ronald Jones. 24, Phillip Lindsay. And 25, Raheem Mostert.
You can tell he's a goddamn Dolphins fan putting Jordan fucking Howard in his top 25. Unbelievable. What a guy.
I put him at 20 on the dot. I had to. That was just a very biased one.
Bro, what a fan. That's a fan. That's a fan. Go ahead, JT.
Austin is as loyal as they come, man. Yeah, I'll tell you what, I don't have Jordan Howard on my list. But I'll start with number 1, Christian McCaffrey, obviously. I mean, just like Austin said, what are you doing if you don't have that guy there? And I got Saquon Barkley at 2. Now, I have Ezekiel Elliott at 3. I think he's going to have a bounce back year. I don't see him having 2 not so great years in a row. And then you got Alvin Kamara at 4, Austin Eckler at 5, Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, Nick Chubb, Joe Mixon, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire to round out the top 10. I got Aaron Jones at 11. Then I have Kenyon Drake, Josh Jacobs, Chris Carson, and Miles Sanders at 15. 16, Le'Veon Bell. 17, Devin Singletary. 18, Leonard Fournette. 19, Melvin Gordon. 20, Todd Gurley. 21, I have David Montgomery. 22, Cam Akers. 23, DeAndre Swift. 24, James Conner, and 25, David Johnson, just because I couldn't somehow leave him off the list.
Yeah, I mean, David Johnson is a tricky one, right? I feel like fantasy owners who had him last year aren't very happy with him. We'll see how far he drops in this year's draft. Mikey Mike, your time to shine, baby. Is James Conner at 1?
No, he's not, surprisingly. But obviously, number one for all of us is going to end up being McCaffrey. My top 10, at least starting off with McCaffrey, then I got Barkley, Derrick Henry at number 3, especially with that good year that he had last year. I'm pretty sure he's going to continue that, especially with Tannehill at quarterback. I mean, one of the things that stood out to me was just Tannehill in the playoffs had an 80-yard game, and Derrick Henry had 200 yards. So it's just something that I'm pretty sure they're going to rely on him again. Number 4, Ezekiel. Number 5, Kamara. 6, Chubb. Joe Mixon. One person that I'm going to say now, I had some trouble with placing him. I didn't know if I wanted to put him in the top 10 or not, but you cannot take away his all his experience. Even though he's been hurt his seasons here, it's Dalvin Cook. He's an incredible running back, but his injuries, he can hurt him when he comes into the fantasy football season. Josh Jacob at number 9, Aaron Jones with the Packers at number 10. Right now at 11, I have Miles Sanders. 12, James Conner. 13, Chris Carson. 14, Austin Eckler. 15, I have Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That's going to be a good rookie to watch, especially with the Chiefs. He's most likely going to be passing out from that and getting points from that position. Todd Gurley at 16, 17, Mark Ingram, 18, Kenyon Drake. We got Fournette, David Johnson at 20. And then the last 5, if you can get these people, especially later on in your draft, you're going to be set. I have David Montgomery with the Bears, Melvin Mack with the Colts, Le'Veon, he dropped on my list. If he was still with the Steelers, he would have been higher. But then we got Devin Singletary, and we got, to round it all off, we got Cam Akers. I think he's gonna kill it this year, especially on that team. The Rams don't really have anybody at running back, so I think Cam Akers is gonna explode for a good year, a good rookie season, I should say.
I think something's wrong with my ear, man. I swear he named 2 FSU running backs. Did I hear that correctly? Whoa.
Listen, DJ got picked up this year too, so watch out with him. All right, DJ and Travis Homer in the same backfield.
And let me tell you something. Not only did he list them, but then he stopped and took time to talk about them.
Uh-huh.
I didn't say anything good about Dalvin Cook, first of all. But Cam Akers, he has some promise right now.
Oh yeah, we gotta hit up the Canes chat, bro. That's I gotta let him. All right, man. Let's get to my list here. I surprised he has more FSU guys on his top 25 than I do, believe it or not. So, so with my list, I am that guy to obviously be a little bit different. I'm gonna go with Saquon being number 1. The only thing that went into that, there hasn't been a continuous number 1 running back in the last couple of years. So Saquon at 1. I actually got Nick Chubb at 2. I expect a big year from Nick Chubb. McCaffrey at 3. Henry at 4. Dalvin Cook, FSU, baby, at 5. Joe Mixon at 6. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. There's always one rookie that pops off. He's going to be that guy this year with the Chiefs' offense, especially with Damian Williams sitting out the year. Zeke at 9. Austin, you're not alone there. I'll explain why later on. Alvin Kamara at 10. I'm sorry. Zeke was at 8. Kamara at 9. Miles Saunders at 10. Miles Saunders had a big year with the Eagles last year. He was actually the guy that replaced Saquon Barkley, so he's like a mini Saquon. We'll get into it a little bit later on. Josh Jacobs from the Raiders. Austin Eckler at 12. Kenyon Drake at 13. Melvin Gordon at 14 with the Broncos. Even with him splitting time with Phillip Lindsay, I still think he can put up some good numbers there. Mark Ingram at 15. Leonard Fournette at 16. Le'Veon Bell, former Steeler, at 17. even with a down year last year against the Jets, it's Le'Veon Bell. He's got all the talent in the world, and I expect a much better year from him. I think not having Darnold there at first, they were expecting the run. I think he got worn down a little bit too quickly, and then after sitting a year, that I think he needed a little bit more. I think now being a year in, a year under his belt after sitting out the whole year, I think he'll bounce back this year. Le'Veon Bell 17, Chris Carson 18, Todd Gurley 19, James Conner, current Pittsburgh Steelers running back, at 20. David Montgomery at 21. I can't believe I listed a Bear, but I did. David Johnson at 22. What's his name? Deshaun Watson has got to throw the ball to somebody, right? DeAndre Swift at 23. I think that the Lions are going to have to start running the football. They got to add another scheme to their offense. It can't just be Matt Stafford throwing for 300 and 400 yards a game. So I expect a big year from him, especially in the passing game. Jonathan Taylor at 24. I think he's a sleeper. Mikey, I know you named Marlon Mack. I think Jonathan Taylor has a lot of talent. He could ultimately take that spot. But, this is kind of a roll in the dice. And then Aaron Jones at 25. I only listed him out of respect of how good of a year he had last year. But this is going to be, somebody that I don't see having a big year, and I'll explain why later. So those are our lists. Austin, since you went first, I'll let you break it down. Tell us the 3 guys on your list that you absolutely are taking, obviously excluding the Saquons and the McCaffreys of the world.
All right, so kicking it off with the ones I'm absolutely taking. For me, first, besides all those guys, would be Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb had a phenomenal year last year, and if Cleveland wants to do anything decent this season, they need to pretty much ride the back of Nick Chubb and then throw once they do some play-action plays. Then following him is Josh Jacobs. He had a phenomenal rookie year, and half of the year he was hurt. So imagine a full healthy season, already 1 year under the belt. And then also James Conner. Got to give some love for Mikey. James Conner is an absolute beast, and I see him doing good, and just to take some weight off of Big Ben coming back.
So for my 3, I'm going to start off with Kenyon Drake, right? Once he got on that Cardinals team, it was just a different type of Kenyon Drake. I'm sure all of us that watch Dolphin games know that it was love-hate with that guy, but he saw his real potential once he got over there. He actually played 79% of the snaps. And during that span, he had the 4th most points for running backs in those 8 games. And through the air, he was targeted about 4.4 times. So that's just, in a PPR league, that's gold right there. I'll take that every day of the week. And for my second one, I have Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So Damian Williams opted out for the season because of COVID. In college, Clyde, he had very good hands. He caught 85% of his targets at him. And you got to think about it. The Chiefs, they're a high-powered offense, and they're going to be up in the game most of the time by a good amount of points. And at the end of the third, fourth quarter, they're going to need to run the ball. So he's just going to get that garbage time points right there. I also see him scoring a lot this year in the goal line or on screen passes and things like that. On third, I see a lot of people think this guy's going to have, I don't want to say a worse year, but a down year from last year is Austin Eckler. I mean, even though he has Tyrod Taylor or Justin Herbert, however they feel to go about that, you got to think towards the end of the season, Melvin Gordon was taking touches from this guy. And he almost had 1,000 yards and he almost had 100 catches. And I just don't see that going away. Obviously, I think it might diminish a little bit, but I think he'll have the same type of year as last year.
And with my, 3 picks that I would absolutely take and make sure that they're starting on my team that are on my top 25. I'll make sure if I have Josh Jacobs available on in the draft, and I'm able to pick him up, I'll make sure that I'm taking him and I'm starting him. He was just a rookie, and he had 1,100 yards. He was a Pro Bowl selection, and he was an all-time first team too. So that's somebody that's always going to give you points. And like I said, after a hell of a rookie season, he's going to continue to make that jump. The second guy that I have here on my list is going to end up being Mark Ingram. That guy's literally Mr. Reliable. Every time you ever pick him up when it comes to the Saints, he always gave you points. Last year, he had another hell of a year with the Ravens. They're not the biggest, I guess, running team when it comes to getting the yards for the running backs. But when Mark Ingram back there, he's going to make sure that he gives you those yards and he gives you those catches and he's going to score. And the last person to round off my top three is going to end up being Devin Singletary. Another young guy, came from the Bills, had a hell of a year. They have Stephon Diggs on that offense, and they're going to look to run the ball. I mean, if they can run the ball with him and then throw it in that run-pass play offense type of deal that they can have, especially after 1 year under his belt, I think Devin Singletary is going to end up having a hell of a year as well.
For my top three to start, I'm going to go with one of the guys that I told you guys not to pick last year, Joe Mixon. I expect a big bounce back year from him. He had a slow start last year, but you saw him kind of pick it up there towards the end. They were getting slightly better quarterback play. They did upgrade the offensive lines, and now they have their weapons back. You got A.J. Green back. Tyler Boyd is still back, and then they drafted T. Higgins. They got Joe Burrow, which I think, again, he's one of my picks to be a sleeper this year. I think that he's going to have a much better year, Joe Mixon is. So that's somebody that I'm taking. The other one is Miles Sanders. I mentioned him earlier. Miles Sanders, especially in a PPR league, you need to pick him up. He went off last year. Like, second half of last season, he was winning games for people, consistently putting up 15 to even 30 points. Extremely talented. He's got great hands. He catches passes from Carson Wentz. And with the Eagles receiving corps being as inconsistent as it is, he was that one reliable guy, him and Zach Ertz. So expect him to have at least 60 to 70 catches this year. Great guy to have for PPR. And then my last guy, JT had talked about him earlier, is Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler, it wasn't even last year. It's been the last 2 years. Every time Melvin Gordon was out, Austin Eckler would shine. And now that Melvin Gordon is completely out of the picture, expect big things here from Austin Eckler. Justin Jackson, his backup, will probably get some reps. So he won't be necessarily by himself, but what he could do in the passing game. And you saw it last year when he was just the sole running back. I mean, he was going off. He was a top 5 running back. So definitely somebody that you want to keep an eye on. My only other question is he doesn't have Phillip Rivers, who's a dink and dunk quarterback. How will that affect him this upcoming year? But I think that he'll be all right, especially with the catches. All right, we're going to move over to the list of guys that we want you to stay away from. Now, we're going to give you guys that are actually inside of the top 25. It might be guys that we may have suggested that, others suggested that you should start. It's going to be back and forth. But again, what we want is just to present you the list, our personal opinions, and then you can make the best educated decision as to why you want to start somebody. I'm trying to be way too professional and too educated for this. This is fantasy football, but this is how serious we take it here. Austin, tell us the 3 running backs that you are staying away from.
So I have 3 here, and this was pretty a tough choice. Definitely, especially since I had him in my top 25. But I had some doubts about him, and one of them is Tyreek Cohen. He has another back behind him that is just as good. He's more of a bruiser. He can carry the ball a little more. So Tyreek Cohen is a lot better in the PPR sense, but if you just want, consistency, you're probably going to go with the opposite back from Chicago. Then Ronald Jones, he mainly popped up on my list because he's in Tampa, and obviously you have Tom Brady. You're going to get some good looks. So that's the reason he's stuck in there, but they also have a new running back there as well. And lastly, Le'Veon Bell. I had some doubts about him and don't know how his season's going to go, especially with maybe some friction with Adam Gase. Who knows? It seems a lot of the stars that Adam Gase is a coach for, they have some type of friction, unfortunately.
Yeah, man. So my three bust. I'm gonna start off with James Conner. Listen, I like the guy, uh, especially off the field. I mean, you can't like him off the field. You can't not like him off the field. But I had him last year, so I know exactly how it felt having him last year. So whoever did have him out there, I'm sorry, and I say that from the bottom of my heart. But the biggest thing this year is, can he stay healthy? Behind him, he has Benny Snell Jr. and Jalen Samuels, but the injuries last year, even when he did play, it was one of those I talked about on a previous episode that when you start a player, but how many touches are they going to get per game? And it was that kind of season for him towards the end of the year. So if he can stay healthy, I think he'll have a decent year at best, but I don't see him staying healthy the entire year. Maybe with Big Ben back, who knows, but I don't see him staying healthy. Another one I have is Todd Gurley, and it's kind of for the same reason. He had that knee and ankle injury, and let's face it, at the running back position, that's exactly what you need. Your knees and ankles. You need to be able to cut. And he just didn't look like Todd Gurley last year. He finished in the top 15 in points, surprisingly, but that's because he had 14 touchdowns. And that's going to spike your points pretty high there. But I wouldn't trust him at all this year. I'm definitely staying away from him. Now watch him have the best year of his career. But one guy that I didn't have in my top 25, but I figured that people would have him, or that he would have the other running backs, are the Colts running backs. So the guy that I have is Jonathan Taylor. I know Sebastian's a big fan of him ever since college. I am too, and I think he's a great player, but I think he would have a great year if he was in a different team. You have Marlon Mack, and then you have Hines, and Marlon Mack is going to get the carries. Hines is going to get the catch because he's a sure-handed receiver. So being a rookie in that offense, I don't think he's going to get that many touches. I think he'll be a great fantasy year in 2-3 years from now. But this year, I would probably stay away from him, unless injuries happen. Then maybe. But the thing is, even in college, he fumbled 18 times, and then out of 68 targets, he dropped 9 balls. So that's a little concerning. But I think that's definitely someone I'm just going to stay away from this year.
And on my list, actually, the 3 people that I have on my top 25 that are a little bit of stay away from. If you could get somebody else, I would. They all are under my top 15. So I'm gonna agree with JT and say Todd Gurley. He's on a new team. He's with the Falcons. They're primarily a passing team, especially with Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones. Todd Gurley is a pass-catching running back. He does do good in the passing game, but just a new team, new environment. Don't know how he's actually going to perform, but I'll just leave it at that. Stay away from him. If you can get somebody else, try to do that. My second person on my list would be Fournette. He was hurt last year. For the most part, maybe he missed a couple games. He did have 1,100 yards, but underperformed when it came to the touchdowns. He only had 3 touchdowns. I think they'll probably go a little bit more with him, but it just felt like last year they did the same exact thing, try to run the ball with Fournette, and it wasn't working out. They had the Jaguars figured out all season when it came to running the ball. And then my last person would be David Johnson. Again, another person on a new team. I know he will be the primary back, especially with the Texans and stuff like that. But I just don't think David Johnson is the same as he was that one year where he was number 1 in fantasy football for 1 or 2 years. He's not the same person. Just try to stay away from him if you can.
I'm not gonna try my boy Jonathan Taylor like that. Shout out to my boy Paul up in Wisconsin. Go Bucky, baby. Our boy's gonna come through here. I see him. If they have any sort of competition, I see Jonathan Taylor winning that job. I mean, there were people comparing him to Zeke and like that type of caliber of running back, but obviously with how the running back position has diminished here in the last couple of years, I think that's where he kind of falls. And he fell in the draft. We saw that. But the 3 guys that I'm going to stay away from, Mikey, I'm sorry, but let's start off with James Conner. I had James Conner 2 years ago, and I drafted him. I didn't draft him, but I picked him up after Le'Veon Bell sat out the year, and he kind of saved my season. Didn't put up the Le'Veon Bell numbers that you usually get, but he doesn't really get the rushing yards like one would think. I think that yes, Big Ben is back, so that'll help, but I don't think it's going to be that big of a difference. Like JT said, great guy off the field. He isn't Le'Veon Bell. And that's pretty evident. He's not Le'Veon Bell. I think that he's solid enough to be a top 20 guy. And I'm saying, if he falls to you fourth, fifth round, take him. But definitely not somebody that you want to reach for. Second round. Definitely not first round. The next guy that I have on my list is Aaron Jones. He was actually a top 10, top 5 quarterback, if I'm not mistaken, for the Green Bay Packers. Now, Aaron Jones is on a contract year, which is usually a good sign. However, the Packers spent their third round pick this past year on a running back, A.J. Dillon from Boston College, who had an incredible career out there, and people are expecting him to play a big role this year. Now, this could mean multiple things, but maybe the Packers drafted a running back to let Aaron Jones go. And in that case, maybe he's going to play a little bit of a bigger role. How does that affect Aaron Jones's numbers? You also have Aaron Rodgers that's kind of on a contract year. How are these guys going to feel this upcoming year knowing that their replacements are there? A lot of people think that they're going to pop off. I feel that way kind of for Aaron Rodgers. I'm not so sold on that for Aaron Jones. And the last person, this is somebody that you're going to draft. Okay, this is somebody that you're going to draft, but I wanted to list him to explain why I had him as low as I did, and that's Ezekiel Elliott. So these guys went first, so they gave you all the guys to stay away from, and I agree with all of them. I'm glad that we all agreed on that, on most of that. But the reason why I wouldn't take Zeke, at least not where you would usually take Zeke inside of the top 5, is for the following. Mike McCarthy, his entire time in Green Bay, didn't run the ball. Okay, I believe he only had one 1,000-yard rusher his entire time in Green Bay. He loves to throw the ball. This is where Aaron Rodgers' numbers popped, because they only throw the football. Now, you have all these weapons. You have 3 number 1 caliber receivers in Dallas. I really think that, and especially with their defense, I could see the Cowboys playing from behind a lot. I have a feeling that they're going to try to run up the score on people, and I'm not sure how involved Zeke is going to be in that game plan. Now, I still see him as a top 10 running back, but if it's somebody, let's say if I got, a top 4 pick and, I'm indecisive, there's a number of guys that I would take before him. I'm not sure that I would take, for example, Clyde Edwards-Helaire ahead of him because of the unknown that he is a rookie. I'm predicting that he'll have a bigger year, but with your number 1 pick, you want to be secure. You want to get somebody that's for sure going to score for you, and just because of that and out of respect, maybe I take Zeke over him. But just to name off the list, Saquon, McCaffrey, Nick Chubb, Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry. These are all guys that I'm taking ahead of him. I would even consider maybe even taking Joe Mixon ahead of Zeke this specific year. That's just how I feel about him. I think he's worth a first round pick, but I would be careful as to where you take him. I know JT feels the opposite that I do there. But guys, now we got to find some players that we did not list, that we have not talked about, that could sneak up there into the top 10, top 15 range, the sleepers. Austin, I'll let you go first. Who is your sleeper for the 2020 season?
So right here, I don't have him on the list. So I have Kenyon Drake, who, like JT said, he flourished in the Arizona system. But I'm going to throw in another one, and that's because Mikey reminded me of Marlon Mack. That guy's a baller. I liked his play last year. I had him on fantasy. So I think those 2 guys are going to be real sleepers for running backs this season.
Yeah, when it comes to sleepers, I think one thing you got to look out for are the handcuffs. Handcuffs can sometimes win you the league. And I think the most valuable handcuff this year is going to be Kareem Hunt. If Nick Chubb, for some reason, goes down with an injury or he struggles, then look for Kareem Hunt, because when Kareem Hunt got into that offense, out of that entire time they were there, he only had 3 less fantasy points than Nick Chubb. So if he's doing that in an offense with Nick Chubb, then imagine him just by himself. So he's going to have a decent year even with Nick Chubb in the offense. But if Nick Chubb does get hurt or struggles, I can definitely see Kareem Hunt being a top 10 guy.
And I agree with you, JT. He was actually one of my sleepers. I know we're supposed to just pick one sleeper, but I couldn't decide, and I ended up picking 2. Kareem Hunt was one of them. Just to piggyback off what JT said, he just played 8 games last year. He scored 3 touchdowns. He had 37 catches. One of them was for a touchdown. He averaged 7.7 yards per catch. This is some guy that most likely Baker's going to dump it off for. He's fast. He has that speed. He's going to break away. This is somebody that you want maybe on your bench, maybe as your flex. You never know. Exactly what JT said. You don't know what the season's going to hold if Chubb ends up getting hurt or anything like that, and Kareem Hunt has to take over that responsibility. And the second guy that I have as my sleeper will be DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift, coming out of Georgia, he's a rookie, first-round pick. He's a hell of a guy. If anybody saw college football, you knew what this guy has in his arsenal. The main reason why I picked DeAndre Swift was because Kerryon Johnson, which is the starting running back for the Lions right now, he hasn't had a full season. He's gotten hurt. He's injury prone the last 2 seasons that he's played in the NFL. He played 10 games, if I'm not mistaken, his first year, 8 games in the second year. And he really underperformed. When he was in the league, or when he first got drafted, he had high expectations, especially on that Lions team. But I really think DeAndre Swift is going to end up excelling on that offense. And if he could take over that running back, that starting position, look for him and make sure that you put him on your team, man, because he's actually going to come out and he's going to ball out with the Lions for sure.
I'm going to put down Jordan Howard, not as the sleeper that I'm going to pick, but he is somebody that could pop off. The Dolphins did nothing to acquire weapons. That's the one thing that they didn't really pick up in the draft. And it almost seems like they're relying on their defense and just pounding the football and winning low-scoring games this year, kind of easing Tua into the league. They bulked up their offensive line, so look for Jordan Howard to have some big numbers. I know they brought in Matt Breida as well, but I think Jordan Howard, if they do split time, he'll be the red zone guy and he'll get the majority of the scores. He could find his way into a top 25. I don't know if he'll be a sleeper to get into the top 10, top 15. That for me is going to be Cam Akers, FSU. There's my second FSU guy right there. This one is like the definition of a sleeper because you really don't know what to expect out of the Rams this year. You really don't know what to expect out of the running game this year now that Todd Gurley's gone. I think that Cam Akers is the most ready running back there. I know they have Henderson there. He had some opportunities last year, didn't really capitalize on them. So I think Cam Akers, especially with the career that he just had at FSU, could potentially jump in there. Top 15, top 10. You do know that the Rams love to run the football. It's just a question of who's going to be their guy. He can catch passes out of the backfield. I think that he could sneak in there into the top 10, top 15. The only question is, will he be a featured guy? Is he just going to split time? That is the question with Cam Akers, but I think he is the definition of a sleeper. I also like the Kareem Hunt pick. I like that one as well. I guess my last question for you guys, and I don't know if this is such a random question. I know I asked some random questions last week, but the draft process in picking a running back, how do you guys approach it? Because there's people that are, running back first 2 rounds if you could, running back wide receiver like your boy. What is your guys' philosophy when drafting running backs? And specifically, when do you look for running backs later on in the middle rounds to the later rounds? What do you look for? Yeah.
So for me, usually first round pick is usually a running back, but depending on where I'm positioned in the draft. If I'm later in the draft, most of the good running backs are immediately taken off the market. Like top 1 through 5 picks are usually running backs or the stud wide receivers like the Julios out there. So then my next step would be to go for a stud wide receiver or take the best tight end off the market. Like he said, tight ends are gold in fantasy.
Yeah, so if I'm, like Austin said, if I'm later on, if I'm like the 7th through 10th pick, most likely I'm going to be taking a wide receiver. And if you're in a snake draft, then once that comes back around, then I'll probably grab a running back right there on that second round, because there's still going to be solid running backs. But if you take, I'm not even going to say an okay running back, because you're still going to get a pretty good running back in the first round, but it's not going to be the same value that you would get a top tier receiver. And you can still get that pretty good, pretty great running back in that second round slot.
I mean, it all depends as well. What type of fantasy football draft are you doing? Is it standard or PPR? Usually, we're all doing PPR, but I mean, if you're in the first 5 picks in the first round, obviously you want to go with the best running back that you have available. And just going off of what Austin and JT said, if you're in the later rounds, the later pick in that first round, or maybe just the later pick in any round, you depends on your type of approach to it. You should be able to go running back heavy and get those 2 running backs on your starting team right away. That way you could get the bulk of your points just from those running backs. So that's where I would go when it comes to drafting running backs.
Mikey, I think you made a good point right there between standard and PPR. Again, everything that we do in this show will be based off of PPR. All you got to do is just remove the catches, and that's basically what your standard leagues are. But it is important to note, especially with running backs, because look at the top 5 guys here. Like, some of you might put, McCaffrey. Like right now we have McCaffrey and Saquon near the top, but if you're playing in a standard league, somebody like Derrick Henry now becomes just as valuable, if not more valuable than these guys, because he's not as involved in the passing game. Some of these running backs that are involved in the passing game do acquire more points. They might rush for 60 yards, but they'll also have 6 catches for 40 yards. So that's where that's where they have their big days. Where Derrick Henry, especially last year, was rushing for over 100 yards every single game. So that's something to kind of keep an eye on for. So like in PPR leagues, just like JT had mentioned, I look for a wide receiver. There's always that one wide receiver that's gonna score more than most running backs, right? Last year was Michael Thomas. I think he scored more than everybody though. But you're gonna. It's better in a PPR league not to reach for a running back, like I mentioned earlier, like a James Conner, even like a Joe Mixon, kind of sneaking up there in the 6th and 7th role just to fill out that running back position. It's more beneficial to you to grab a wide receiver and then get a second round, an RB2 in the second round. That way you at least have one legitimate player. I think drafting legitimate players is like the most important part, right? Like you have to guarantee yourself at least 2 guys that are going to consistently get you points. That's how you win. You got to have guys that you just, what is it that they say? Set it and forget it. You don't even have to think about looking at that guy or benching that guy. That's what you want to get with your first pick, and if you could with your second pick, even better. But you definitely don't want to go out and reach for I don't know, Aaron Jones is probably going to be ranked pretty high this year. Joe Mixon, maybe Mark Ingram will be ranked a little bit higher. Like, you don't want to reach out for these guys. Going back into the later drafts, JT mentioned a key word, the handcuffs. Those are what you're looking for right there in the handcuffs. When you have no idea who to pick, you got to start looking, and we'll get into more detail once we go over draft strategies and things like that in a few weeks from now. But you're looking for guys that could potentially take that starting spot. The A.J. Dillons of the world, for example. You're looking for those guys. Jonathan Taylor would be another. That's what you're looking for as far as running backs, because running backs, believe it or not, come at a premium. Any final thoughts?
Let's just keep on doing what we got to do. Hopefully, all of our running back list is actually good. And I mean, again, I always say it every single time. I hope I don't mess up in my draft. I want to do a mock draft, and I want to see what we're dealing with. So hopefully we get that and we get to show it off in the show.
What I gotta say is change Mikey's list. Put I forgot his name. Let's see. Drop the ball here, guys.
finishing thoughts.
Okay, I got it. All right, change Mikey's list. Number 1, we have Dalvin Cook, and then number 2, we have Cam Akers. That's
Don't
Mikey's
you
new top 2.
ever say that again. Ever.
I got money. I got money that he drafts them both this year. I'm gonna laugh. I'm gonna laugh when it's his turn to draft and they fall right on his lap. He's like, "Fuck, I gotta take him."
If it's the 5th round and Mikey's picking right behind me, I'm taking James Conner. I don't even care. I'm not gonna use him. I'll drop him right there. But
Now that you guys are saying that I'm gonna end up picking Cam or Dalvin, I'm gonna end up picking literally DJ and Travis Homer. Watch, now, just to say that I have.
That's rough. That is a rough selection there.
God forbid Chris Carson gets hurt and Rashard Penny gets hurt. You're gonna see these guys flourish. Trust
Yeah,
me.
I know. No, let me tell you, if they get down to their 3rd and 4th string running backs, they're in trouble, bro.
It happens every year, bro.
They're gonna call up Marshawn Lynch again, bro.
that's the handcuff, bro. Come on.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
JT, nothing.
Ah, man, that's it. I think we pretty much covered it all.
I just have one comment for my final thoughts. I can't believe nobody named David Johnson as somebody to stay away from. Are we buying stock on David Johnson now that he's with a new team?
He was my stay away from in my top 25. So
I think that's more assumed than something you say out loud at this point.
The main reason he also sneaked in on my list was that he's on a new team in Houston, and they just traded away their number 1 wide receiver. So they're going to lean a little bit more into the running game. So we'll see what happens with David Johnson.
Yeah, I'm on Austin's boat there with David Johnson. I just think they have to throw to somebody. It might as well be him if he could stay healthy.
Yeah, I think it's going to be like the Joe Mixon effect from last year.
Yeah, it could be. All right, guys. That's it for this week. See you next week.
see you later, guys.
Later.
Shout out to the boys for joining me. Another successful week of the cheat sheet. Love doing rankings. Love doing rankings. But one thing that I forgot to mention was the 2019 running back rankings. I'm going to put those up on the screen for you. And I'll read through the list for our listeners on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeart real quick. Number 1 is Christian McCaffrey. 2 was Derrick Henry. Aaron Jones 3. Zeke 4. Dalvin Cook 5. Chubb 6. Austin Eckler 7. Mark Ingram 8. Chris Carson 9. Saquon 10. Joe Mixon 11. Todd Gurley 12. Leonard Fournette 13. Josh Jacobs 14. Miles Saunders 15. Alvin Kamara 16. Marlon Mack 17. Kenyon Drake 18. Phillip Lindsay 19. Raheem Mostert 20. Le'Veon Bell 21. David Montgomery 22. Carlos Hyde 23. That's kind of a shocker. Sony Michel 24 and Melvin Gordon 25. That was the 2019 running back rankings for last year in fantasy football. I will also put up our rankings, our overall rankings for the running back position this year. Again, these are fantasy rankings. Overall, Christian McCaffrey was our number 1 running back. Saquon was 2. Derrick Henry 3. Alvin Kamara 4. Nick Chubb 5. Zeke 6. Dalvin Cook 7. Joe Mixon 8. Josh Jacobs 9. Austin Eckler 10. Aaron Jones 11. Chris Carson 12. Clyde Edwards-Helaire 13. Miles Saunders 14. Todd Gurley 15. Leonard Fournette 16. Kenyon Drake 17. James Conner 18. Le'Veon Bell 19. Mark Ingram 20. Melvin Gordon 21. David Johnson 22. David Montgomery 23. Devin Singletary 24. And the second FSU running back snuck in there, Cam Akers, in at 25. Those are our overall predictions for running back rankings here in the 2020 season. Now, if we remember what we saw in the 2019 rankings, there's a lot of guys, a little bit of a surprise, much like the quarterbacks. Again, these guys are going to get injured. I mean, you saw Saquon in at 10. He missed some time. There's multiple guys that are always going to miss some time, and that's why the rankings look like how they do. I'm sure that there will be a different top 25 at the end of the fantasy season as always, but got to do the best with what we got. That's going to be all for this one. Let's talk about Thrive Fantasy. Don't forget to download the Thrive Fantasy app. Remember, I'm still hooking you up with 20 instant bucks when you sign up with my code TOOL, T-O-O-L. Again, TOOL, T-O-O-L. Sign up with my code. I give you 20 instant bucks added to your account. You must start your account with at least $20. Whatever you start your account with, whether it's 20, whether it's $100, I will throw in 20 instant dollars into your account for you to use with your daily fantasy. Go ahead, download it now. Download the app. Use our code TOOL, T-O-O-L. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe on all platforms. Don't forget to follow us. We are on YouTube. We are on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, iHeartRadio. Go ahead, do that now. Don't forget to continue tuning in to the cheat sheet. Extremely important for you to win your fantasy football league. Make sure you tell your friends. Until next time, I'm signing off.